And we've got Mark in Austin,
Mark in
Texas.
Austin, who is local. We'll start with local fellow. Good.
There you are. Mark. Hi.
I have a lot of experience with theology and the academic side of Christianity, so I thought I would call in and have a polite debate with you.
That's fantastic. I'm seeing on the board here, are calling on behalf of your church?
A lot of the youth at my church have been watching your program.
Thank you.
And while myself and the parents find it amusing, we are worried that the youth are being tricked and deceived by our program.
Oh dear.
Well, we don't.
I think you're on to us.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
No, seriously.
My congregation is watching, so please be polite. Last time someone from our congregation called, your host Jeff was wild.
Jeff can be a bit of a firebrand, I'll admit that.
You're going to need to. We're feeding back.
We've got some feedback.
Yeah, if you're watching on your television while you're talking to us...
We've been having some problems with studio stuff for the last few weeks.
Okay.
So
because also if you're watching the program and you have your television turned up, sometimes that will feed back into the phone also.
Okay.
So you don't want to do that.
Well, anyway,
the rule of this program is that you get what you give. So we're all about having polite discussions. But it works both ways. So.
And so, have you mentioned what your church is?
Mark,
I can't hear you very well.
Oh,
okay.
Have you mentioned what your church is? Would you like to plug them?
My church is the Austin Stone.
Okay.
And,
hi, Austin Stone. Go on.
We are a New Testament church.
Okay.
Okay, so what's your question? Or what would you like to talk about today?
My question is, first of all, is it true that on your show, you made a comparison between God and Bigfoot?
Very likely, yes.
Yeah, we quite possibly have done that, yeah.
Okay, first of all, it is true there is no Bigfoot because there simply are no transitional forms. There is a $10,000 cash prize for anyone who presents a transitional form to Ray Comfort.
I think Ray Comfort.
Oh, you're one of this batch. All right.
Right. Okay. I think you'll find that the reason that we brought up Bigfoot is because people frequently ask us, why don't you believe in God? And can you prove that there's no God? And the kind of response that we usually throw out there is, it doesn't have to be Bigfoot. It could be leprechauns or fairies or unicorns. But the question is, do you believe? You don't believe in Bigfoot, but can you prove that there's no Bigfoot?
Well, I think you are correct that Bigfoot is not real. However, God is real.
Right, but you can't prove that Bigfoot doesn't exist. That is probably the point that somebody was trying to make by bringing it up earlier.
Yes.
So, what we're saying, I'm sorry, I should draw these lines a little better. When we say that we're atheists and we don't believe that God exists, the point that we're making is that in order to demonstrate that something like a God exists, the burden of proof rests on the person making the claim. So if you wanted to make me believe that Bigfoot exists, you would have to first present some pretty convincing reasons why you would believe in Bigfoot. Now, you don't believe in Bigfoot. You do believe in this omnipotent presence in the universe. And all we like to say is basically, how do you know? What kind of evidence would you have about that?
Now, this is where you start to lose your credibility with people who have watched the program before.
Well, I'm sorry about that.
Because Matt Slick already did a proof for God.
Yeah, and
you might remember it from the episode he called in and embarrassed Matt Dillahunty, your organization's president.
That's really funny. Not how we saw it. Actually, what's interesting is that after that episode happened, he went back and changed the web page where he was making that argument because Matt demonstrated that his argument didn't work.
Right. Well,
because the point is that you could take Matt's. I wasn't on that actual program, but we watched it. You could take
Matt Slick.
Yeah, you could take Matt Slick's entire. We're familiar with the transitional argument for God, and there was that whole program about it. The problem with it, as Matt Slick presents it on the CARM website, is that you can take his entire argument word for word, right? Every single one of his points, as it's outlined, and even if you were to grant him, for the sake of argument, every one of his premises, although on that program we pointed out where some of the, Matt Dillahunty pointed out where some of the premises were flawed, even if you took his entire argument as written and said, all right, I'll grant you this, I'll grant you this, I'll grant you this, I'll grant you this, you get right down to his conclusion at the very bottom where he says, and we call this creative force or whatever, we call this thing God, right? When you get to his conclusion, you can take his entire argument, you can replace the word God in the conclusion with Zeus, with the flying spaghetti monster, with any mythical being that you care to dream up. And the argument works just as well. All right? You can take his entire argument as worded and come up with the same conclusion, and we call this being the invisible magic space pixie. And the argument works just as well. So that essentially is why the argument failed. And what Matt Slick did was...
I think that Matt Slick's point was that everything is physical or conceptual. So absolute.
But do you agree with me that you can
not physical?
But do you agree with me that you can do that with his argument?
And that means they're concept in God's mind.
Well, how do you distinguish God's? Well, first off, how do you distinguish God's mind as a thing that actually exists?
Well, that is how you prove that God's mind exists.
But as I just explained to you,
the evidence from the Bible will prove that the Christian God exists.
But what I just brought up, right, was that the transcendental argument for God, as Matt Slick had written on the CARM website, in its exact wording, you can replace the word God with the name of any mythological being that you choose, and the argument works just the same. And you didn't disagree with me when I said that, so shall I take that as agreement that the argument works just well as the transcendental argument for anything?
It proves that there's a mind.
How does it even prove?
Can I change track? I'm sorry.
No, I just want to say, but you agree then that the argument can be used just as well to prove any mythological being as well as God. Am I right or am I wrong when I suggest that?
It proves there is some God, then the Bible proves the God is the Christian God.
Well, how do you get from the wording of that argument to the Bible? I mean, where's the link from that argument to the Bible? Because again, you could say, you could take the argument, as I've just suggested, replace God with Zeus, right? And then you could say, the argument proves that there is a God, and then Greek mythology proves that God is Zeus. See, what you're saying to me is exactly the same as saying that.
Greek mythology did not have eyewitnesses.
Well, I mean, as far as we know, anyone who wrote the Bible, I mean, you know, that came like 30 years later. But I'd also like to go back to one of the premises you were talking about earlier. You said that everything is, I'm sorry, remind me of the wording. Everything is either physical or conceptual, right? Right? Can you hear me?
Mark, can you hear Russell?
Mark.
Are you there?
Hello?
I'm not hearing Mark anymore. Yeah, control room, did we lose Mark? Okay.
Oh.
All right.
Hang on. We're sorry about this.
Okay, technical problems. Also, earlier on, in terms of comparing God to Bigfoot, while we're waiting to get whatever issue is a problem right now.
We're going to put you on hold, Mark, and we're going to try again in 2 minutes. I'm sorry about this.
Okay. Well, Bigfoot, God, Loch Ness Monster.
I want to finish what I was saying, actually.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, I mean, the premise of this transcendental argument is that everything is either physical or conceptual. And the idea is that if if these things are to exist, then the conceptual stuff must be held in the mind of something called a God, unless there are human minds to conceive of it. So my question, and I think the approach that Matt took when Matt Slick called, was, which one is God? Is God physical or is God conceptual? Because if God is one of those or the other, then obviously the basic issue of the question has not gone away. It's just been transferred, like who's conceiving of God, or where did the physicalness of God come from? And if you say that God is neither physical nor conceptual,
then you have to identify.
Then you've undercut your own argument, because by saying everything is physical or conceptual, then you're making a special exception to the rule that you say applies to everything. And once you acknowledge that there's stuff that is neither physical nor conceptual, then